Describe your worst ever panic attack and what went on.
I mean, before some games, it's like unbearable, like multiple trips to the can, like your stomach is in such knots that you'd think it's impossible to go to the bathroom that many times. Before an afternoon game, no less. Unbearable anxiety, unbearable nervousness about what's about to transpire.
And what are you thinking about in those moments?
Every player on your team playing their worst, and then every player on the other team being at their best. But every game and mostly every victory has made it a lot easier for me. Every championship has made it a lot more calm for me.
But correct me if I'm wrong, a panic attack before has actually put you in the hospital.
Oh yeah, hospital, not necessarily always too before a game. Sometimes, just overwhelmed or, I just think a lot of the time, and when I was as a high school coach too, it was like the combination of young kids, young marriage, you just got fired at Rutgers, you're now a high school coach, money's tight, you're just not sure,
And you always thought you were going to get fired?
Yeah, I mean, like the fear of just not succeeding and not being able to provide better and not being able to be accomplished and have achieved great things. That to me should make somebody nervous.
And when you've gone to the hospital, do you know it's the panic attack that's going on, or are there times you think you're having a heart attack or whatever?
No, you would think that you would think that you're going to have a heart attack. I've had two of them, recently. Even I would say the one it wasn't being hospitalized. It was ringing the stock exchange bell the year before, and it was just the emotional and physical and mental strain of a season that you put everything into, and then like the euphoria of winning it and being a little tired, and then you're running around and you're doing a lot of cool stuff, but you become disconnected from your team and your players. So I remember just being overwhelmed with everything, and then being outside of my comfort zone, like being off my routine of things that I like to do, and the way I like to spend my days, not having a practice to go to, not having my Peloton ride to go on in the morning, not having my weirdo room. It became overwhelming.
There was a period of time in the past couple of years, I believe, where you went into such a funk that you weren't going into work. You couldn't leave the house, and some thought you just might quit.
Yeah, so it was prior to my neck, prior to my spine surgery, I had just a tough maybe month where the doctors, they could not diagnose what I was dealing with. I was getting a little bit lightheaded, and I was getting tingling down my back of my skull, down through my left arm, which in my mind, meant that I was having some problem with my heart.
You were constantly walking around with one of those.
Yeah, I have a heart condition that I deal with already, which is something I have to track, which is hereditary. So in my mind, I knew it was something, but they were giving me gluten tests and food allergies, and I'm like, there's something else here. And I checked myself I drove myself to Hartford emergency room, and I was crying, and I was experiencing these symptoms, and I got discharged, and I was not going to work at that time the rest of that week.
We got him looked out head to toe, and he kept saying to me, I have something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me. I said, they checked you out, blood work, everything, you have nothing wrong with you. Went home, mentally it wasn't good. I saw a huge difference in him, which was kind of scary.
What did you see?
He was obsessing, walking around with heart monitors, telling me that, he had an addiction to caffeine, which I never saw him drink a cup of coffee. It was like, what are you talking about? But he was searching for something, and it was not bullshit. I thought it was bullshit at first. I was like, you cannot be you're a grown man telling me that you have things wrong with you. But he really was.
Why couldn't you be around people at that time?
I convinced myself that, that I was dying, that something was physically wrong with me. And then because something I thought was physically wrong with me, I had gotten away from my Bible and my prayer and my meditation and my journaling. Things just went off the rails for me because my health was failing me.
He didn't want to go to work, which has never happened in his entire life. So he started to see a psychiatrist, but he couldn't even drive. Now I'm saying to myself, we are coaching. You're coaching in front of thousands of people, and now you can't drive a car?
Tell about the exercise where you were told to go into CVS by yourself, go get something.
Yeah.
And you end up dropping the bag of chips in the aisle and running out.
I was in such a bad way that I couldn't even stand to be in the store.
He was going to get Tostitos or something, and then I walked out and I saw him run out of the store, walk fast out of the store, and I'm like, where'd he go? And I see the Tostitos there, and I'm like, what, you really can't do this?
It scared the shit out of me, and it rocked me to my core, and you couldn't convince me otherwise. What was I going to go to work for? There's something wrong with me. I couldn't function. The wheels came off mentally. I couldn't move.
Did you think you were done?
I thought I was done, and I didn't care. So it's crazy to me that it took, I remember I was in such a bad way. I slept on the basement couch that night, and I woke up with a stiff neck. So because I had a stiff neck, I came in that morning, that week, and went and saw our trainer here. And the trainer said to me, took me over to the school doc, Dr. Dina, and said, why don't you just go get an MRI of your neck or your spine? And I would just I want to see what's going on there. You got a stiff neck. And
they didn't have any of the context as to what was going on at the time?
They had no idea because I just shut down completely. And I went to my own doctors. I don't know if I was trying to hide it from UConn because I was afraid that they'd fire me if they found out I was broken a little bit. So Dr. Dina, they get the MRI results. That next morning, I get an emergency call. You got to get to this neurologist, and just brought me in there and said, hey, listen, buddy, the clock is ticking. With the way that you've got issues with your spine, you've got to go get 2 to 3 level disc replacement in your neck. And if you get into a minor fender bender, or if a player runs into you in practice, you could be quadriplegic, paraplegic. It's that serious. And this isn't one that you can wait 2 or 3 months on, a year now. You need to get in this week, next week, because you're at risk. And in a way, I never felt better, or never felt, even more of a level of fear. But the fact that somebody diagnosed what was wrong with me was made me feel so much better in a weird way. And it was I immediately snapped out of everything though. I was coaching in practice with a bubble of managers and coaches around me. So to avoid players from running into me, and when I was driving home, I was keeping crazy distance. When I was walking up and down stairs, I was every step. But I was able to then back functioning and just mentally preparing for, you know, the surgery and then the rehab.
He was back on his horse. He couldn't wait to go to work. I think he was back in work the next day, like a day or two after I was driving him in, you know, with all his, you know, stuff on. But he was back, and that's all it took. He was walking around the neighborhood. Every day he would do further and further walks. He wanted me to take him to work. Thank God, he's back.